Thank you all so much for dialing in today. I'm really excited to dive into this office hours, both to learn all about transitioning from the hustle to sustainable business growth, and also because a core goal of Dreamers and Doers is to amplify you and your journeys. And one of the ways we achieve this is by facilitating game-changing educational events such as this one that give us all the opportunity to up-level together. So before we officially begin, I wanted to share a bit of background information on our esteemed expert. Shani is an award-winning global marketer, business strategist, and creative executive coach who helps companies and individuals build an inner compass and smart strategies to maximize value while maintaining integrity in a rapidly changing world. Her work focuses on the habitual practices that move things from good to great on a micro level and helping remove barriers for more creative professionals to thrive on a macro level. She runs a boutique consulting firm, Jamila Studio, where she supports BIPOC and women entrepreneurs through personal and business growth. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Shani. We are so excited to learn from your expertise today. We know how valuable your time is, and we're so grateful to you for investing in the Dreamers and Doers Collective in this way.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so let me know if you can see the presentation. All good. So super excited to be here. Thank you for investing your time, not only from hearing from me today, but also for developing more sustainable growth strategies. So our talk today is from the hustle to sustainable growth. And it's really about transitioning to healthy and aligned business practices that lead to empowering and sustainable growth. So I'm Shani, and why am I here? Thank you so much, Hannah, for the introduction. First is really just to give back to Dreamers and Doers. So I've been a Dreamers and Doers member for 5 years, and it's been really great to connect with all the amazing women, to learn from lots of my colleagues and my peers, and also I really had some good connections. So through Dreamers and Doers, I was able to become a freelance contributor for Forbes. So lots of good things from Dreamers and Doers. I'm going to share some insights today. So though this is called From the Hustle to Sustainable Growth, I am not anti-hustle because I do believe that it is a natural part of business. I just don't want you to get stuck there. So I'm going to share some insights from my work as a consultant and a coach, as well as my work with larger companies in a marketing and branding capacity. And then really is to connect with you. So I work exclusively with BIPOC and women creative leaders. So really I'm here today to not only share some insights, but I'm going to spend about 30 minutes talking through a couple of slides, but I want to save time at the end to answer any questions that you have. So who's this for? So my target audience are creative leaders of professional service businesses, but really it could be for anyone who wants to build a profitable business without burning themselves out. So when we think about how businesses are built, it's sales and impact over time. So things that we've seen before, we hear about the startup phase. That really is, in the very beginning when you're figuring stuff out, this really is your hustle phase. So maybe your sales and your impact is low. Maybe you have little to no profit. You're really just figuring things out. And it is totally okay to be in that phase. What you want to do is be able to continue to pivot, experiment so that you can get out of that phase and go into the growth phase. In the growth phase, it's about increasing your profit, increase your impact, bringing in some profit, and that really is about transitioning. In the growth phase, you will probably, what we often call break your business a couple of times to rebuild it anew so that you can mature. And in the maturity phase, this is where you have consistent impact in sales, you're increasing profit and you're really thriving. And then you're on to the beyond phase, which can be anything. We think successful businesses might need to, expand and have multiple doors or multiple offices. They may need to sell to another company. But honestly, ending a business can be a successful place. You don't have to have your business forever. That can also be a marker of growth. So I tend to work with people in the growth stage, people who are already have some traction with what they're doing, bringing in some profit, and really looking to build sustainability and figuring out how to get to that maturity phase. So, question in the chat, what phase do you think your business is in right now? Or you could just drop your answers in the chat. I can see them there. Growth. Cool. Great. Awesome. So in the growth phase, starting a business takes hustle, but growing one takes strategy. And what strategy really is a decision based on a desired outcome in a competitive field. As a business leader, as you're transitioning from the startup to this growth phase, you're really looking at the data that you've gathered from all the figuring things out to make smarter decisions. So we're going to talk today about working smarter and not just harder. So my advising framework is all about decisions for sustainable growth. So it starts with being vision aligned. Where is your business headed, and do you trust yourself enough to get there? Profit generating, what will move your market right now at this very moment? And then operationally sound, how does it work without overworking you? So what we'll cover today will help you where you might get stuck in some of these areas. So we'll talk about unclear vision, what to do when you're unclear or overwhelmed. Unconnected marketing, 4 questions to ask yourself before chasing that next marketing trend, because as you know, as a business owner, there are so many different marketing tactics that you could use out there. And then unintentional systems, managing cash flow to help you minimize burnout. So we'll start with what to do when you're unclear and overwhelmed. So you want to check in on the most common vision blockers. You want to invest in bettering your judgment. And you want to set a North Star metric. So jumping into checking in on your most common vision blockers. Vision is really a form of leadership, and great leaders are self-aware. As entrepreneurs, you are putting lots of yourself out into the world, lots of your perspective out into the world, and it really helps to be aware of where you personally are and checking on the places where you might get stuck. So 4 reasons we struggle with vision. So cultural conditioning, what this often sounds like is people like me don't get to blank, don't get to dream big, don't get to only work 4 hours a week, don't get to be able to invest in their family long-term, don't get to say no on occasion to a certain business. Often we hear this is imposter syndrome, but it really is about the biases that the larger society often puts on us. So we want to check in when we're struggling to figure out what's next for us. Are we leaning into this cultural conditioning? Safety, and what that feels like is I don't want to rock the boat too much. Things might feel like they're good now. Do I want to stretch myself and take on risks? Perfectionism. This is one that I struggle with often. If it's not right, it's not ready. That's often a stopping block from us, and wanting to think, rethink, and overthink and perfect what we put out before we put it out. And then skill. Sometimes it's really, you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. So because you don't know what you're doing, you don't want to move forward. So I'd love to see in the chat with these 4 blockers, which is the most common for you? So I see a perfectionist, yes. Yeah, cultural conditioning. I feel specifically for women and women of color, that is often, what could get in our way. Yep, all of them. Yep, all of them. Perfectionism. All of the above. Yeah, so what you want to do when you're thinking about these common vision blockers, they're always going to exist. So there is always going to be part of you that, will feel some or maybe all of this, but you want to make sure that you're checking in on this and make sure that it is not blocking your vision. Then you want to invest in bettering your judgment. So, when there's a gap between your vision and your reality, the answer isn't always discipline. Sometimes it's your decisions. So I believe that you are all intelligent women. You are building companies that are great. Often the thing that gets in your way isn't time management. It isn't, accountability. Often it's like, are you making the right decisions? You can be going really strong. You can be, using all your time in a direction that doesn't work for you. So when it comes to investing in better judgment, there are two ways that you can do that. So there's incremental growth. So this is growth that's changed over time, and that's what knowledge and insight. So that's often, reading books or, attending a workshop. These are things that you can build over time within your own understanding. And this is often an individual pursuit. You can, I'm a person who buys way too many books and tries to put lots of things on my reading list, or like I'll listen in to a workshop or I'll listen to a podcast. And that's really how I'm trying to change my perspective and my judgment over time. And that's really a low to medium investment. Books don't cost a ton. Sometimes workshops are free. You really want to invest in this growth because it's the easiest to do. Then we move on to step change growth. This is really that accelerated and applied wisdom and connection. And this is something that you co-create with other people. So this may be investing in, I will have a podcast recommendation later. So this may be investing in a coach or an advisor or a therapist. So when we say step change growth, this is growth beyond anything that you could do by yourself. And that's really because you're leaning on the understanding of other people, the wisdom of other people, and the connection that when they're working one-to-one or really close with you. And this tends to be a high investment, and it can be a high investment with money where you might be paying someone to work directly with you, or it may be a high investment in time. This is also you developing relationships. So developing your network, working with mentors. So when I think of ways to better my judgment when I'm stuck, I try to have a distribution of both. So incremental growth, things that I can do on my own, books that I can read on my own, maybe it's a course that I can take on my own, but also in the high investment space, where can I connect with people that can help me accelerate faster than what I could do on my own? And then we want to set a North Star metric. So what is that? So a North Star metric is one measurement that's the most predictive of a business's progress towards its vision. It's really what I like to call the ultimate strategic decision maker. So if there was one thing that you could measure right now that could determine how successful your business would be, what would that be? And knowing that can really help you make decisions based on how you should spend your time, where you should invest your money, and the status of your growth. So examples of some North Star metrics. So we'll look at the vision, where you want to be, your North Star metric, what you're measuring, and some growth strategies to build against that. So for instance, maybe your vision is you want to help lots of people. Maybe ever since you were little, you wanted to be on stages, you wanted to touch lots of folks. What you might be measuring in your business is contracts over time or engagements over time. And as you're building your growth strategy, you want to better your prospect reach. So you want to better the amount of people that you're getting in front of so that you know that you can measure how many contracts you're getting from that. If, for instance, your vision, like me, is to work part-time, you are going to be measuring how much time you're spent working in your business. So you might want to decrease the amount of time that you spend working on your business to make sure that you can get all of the great things out of it without having to work 40 hours a week on it. And a growth strategy there might be product leverage. Because you don't want to spend every waking hour you have working, you want to figure out how to build products that can have some leverage. So maybe it is a course that you're building that you can deliver to lots of people at once, or maybe it is you're packaging your services so that, you know, it's a repeatable process that you can hire more people to help you with, so that you don't have to be the person delivering the services. So you'll start to see how, based on what your vision is for your business, and also how you want to work within your business, it then begins to dictate what you measure and what your strategy is for to achieve it. And then build relationships might be your vision. Maybe you're a person who wants to get really deep with people. You want to build relationships over time. And then what you're going to measure, what your North Star metric is building repeat customers. So you're looking at how often do people come back to you. And then a growth strategy for that is you want to build a better customer experience. Beyond having a great product, why do people want to continue to work with you time after time? Is it that you're delivering an interesting experience? Do you make sure that you know their birthdays, or do you make sure that you know what their staff likes? Like, as you can see, knowing where you're going can really help you develop the steps along the way. So, into marketing, 4 questions to ask before chasing the next marketing trend. Is my business positioned to succeed there? How does it fit into my marketing and sales ecosystem? Do I have the capacity for the next 3 to 6 months? And does it genuinely have my curiosity? So, is my business positioned to succeed there? So I'm pretty sure that you've heard about positioning. So that is your unique position in market where, okay, I see some people's biggest problems. It's your unique position in market where what you do meets your customers' needs and is differentiated from your competitors. So you want to lean into your competitive advantage. The easiest way to market to have a positioning statement is X for Y. So for example, I do business advising and consulting for women of color creative founders. Drop it in the chat if you feel like you are very solid on what your positioning is. Anyone? Cool, okay. Great. So that's one of the biggest decisions that you need to make in your business is how you're going to position your business so that your market knows that you're for them. But also what you have to think of when you're thinking of these channels, these new marketing trends that are popping up, you want to think of market adoption. So this is the market adoption curve. I don't know if anyone has seen this before, but this is basically how new trends, how new technology, how it is adapted over time. So at the very beginning, you'll have your innovators, then you'll have your early adopters, and then we have something called the chasm, which it can take a very long time for the majority of people to jump on it. So as you're looking at the market adoption curve and this new technology that people may be starting to talk about, you want to let the market decide where you invest your time. Like for instance, NFTs is a new trend that people are right now trying to use to leverage in a marketing space. So you want to look at, and this is going to take a little bit of research on your end, how much adoption is it? Is it, are you only seeing a few people talking about it? Is it not a majority of people talking about it? And then based on, how much people have adopted, that is a representation of how you should be spending your time. So, if you're super curious about something, if you're super curious about Web3, but that's not something that the majority of people, that 34% of people are jumping into, and it's really just in the early adoption phase, maybe you're only spending 10% of your time invested in that, because it may go somewhere, but you don't want to spend a ton of your time invested where people aren't. So how does it fit into my marketing and sales ecosystem? So we know the marketing and sales funnel, taking from awareness through to interest, to consideration, intent, evaluation, and purpose. But really, this is an idealized state. It assumes that everyone who enters is ready to buy with convincing. And as you know, working for your business, that isn't always the case. Often we confront people who are curious about what we're posting or curious about what we're talking about, but they're really not ready to buy. So when in reality, people behave differently based on not only their awareness, but their intent to purchase. So you want to look at the brand awareness and intent matrix. So, this is people, whether they're highly motivated to purchase as of right now, or if they're curious for later. And then you want to look at people who are completely unaware of your brand, and then people who are aware of your brand. So you want to work not just in this one-dimensional sales funnel, but also look three-dimensional about people's intent to purchase and their awareness levels. So thinking about building sustainable marketing and sustainable selling practices. This is assuming that you are using marketing to acquire new customers. So this is assuming that you've exhausted all of your referral opportunities, or they're drying up or slowing down. When you're looking at sustainable marketing, you want to spend a majority of your marketing efforts and your budget on awareness to introduce your business to new people. So this is the top of the funnel that you've heard about, this awareness and lead generation, that's really about connection, getting people to know and like you. But what you want to do is you want to tailor your messaging to differentiate to those who are motivated to change or buy. There's a difference between building an audience and getting customer leads. Building an audience might be people who might save your post. They might be comment on all the things that you post. They might think that they might love your thought leadership, but they may not be ready to buy from you. So you want to make sure that you are differentiating your messaging to talk to people who have an intent to make a change or have an intent to purchase something to get to where they need to go. And then when we think about sustainable selling, we want to directly sell to those who are motivated to change and have a connection to your company. This is quality over quantity. So there's no need to chase those who aren't ready. I don't subscribe to cold calling. I know that is a strategy that works for people, and it really depends on your comfortability. But often people need some kind of connection to you to be able to buy. That connection doesn't need to be a strong connection. It could really be they need someone who does a DEI workshop and who is based in Chicago, because they're based in Chicago and they need someone to come to a conference. So the connection can be a local connection. You really want to be able to sell to people who are connected to you in some way. And that could be because of your expertise, that could be because of your location, and then directly sell to them. Often, marketing doesn't specifically ask for the buy. You want to ask for the buy in places where people want to buy. And then you spend the majority of the remainder of your marketing efforts on nurturing those who need convincing. You have the least control over changing minds, so don't overwork yourself in this place. When we look at the psychology of what causes people to buy, it really is willingness. So if someone isn't ready, the convincing, you can put out the convincing, but the change is all on them. So you want to spend the least amount of your time here, but you want to make it impactful. So you want to build once and repurpose or go deeper on existing awareness and efforts levels. And if you're looking at this and you're saying, why are we only spending a small amount of time on things like selling and nurturing, but so much time on lead generation and awareness? If we think about the Pareto principle, 20% of your effort leads to 80% of your results. So you often don't have to, it really is quality over quantity here. So when you have a really focused message for people who are ready to buy, it will get you the results. So do I have the capacity for the next 3 to 6 months? So, when we look at how our businesses are doing, a 6-figure business is really an underperforming 7-figure business. It really is about business design and capacity. You're not making the amount of money that you want in your next growth level, and that really isn't because of underperformance. It really might be because you need to rebuild your business to make that amount of money. As I mentioned in the beginning, when we were looking at the business growth table, often in the growth stage, you have to break your business down a bit. You have to change some practices. You have to, maybe bring in more staff. So don't think because you aren't reaching the next level of your business is really because of underperformance. It really is about strategically thinking about what you need to have in place in order to transition your business into that more high performing revenue business. So we think about capacity, and what capacity is not only your time, your money, your resources, and your teams, but it's your processes, your mental and emotional wellness. So, we only have a certain amount of hours a day. You are not going to be able to increase capacity in your business by, making more hours. We don't have any more than 24 hours, but you can build capacity by bringing in more team members, bringing in more resources, getting more efficient processes, and making sure that you're mentally and emotionally well. So before you decide on your next marketing trend, not only look at, how much time you have, but think of what are the resources that you might need to bring in to be able to sustain this for 3 to 6 months. When we think of why we look at 3 to 6 months, is because you want to be able to measure results over time. You want to be able to measure results over a quarter or a half or a year to really determine the effectiveness of the channel that you're using. So then, does it generally have your curiosity? Don't do things you don't like because you think they will work. Everything works, but it might not work for you. There are more than enough tactics out there to get you to where you need to go in your business. And there are no guarantees. So don't think, right now TikTok is the thing that works for people. It might not work for you. Are you interested in it? Do you have the capacity for it? Does it fit into your marketing sales ecosystem? There are lots of ways. As my mom would say, there are lots of ways to skin a cat. There are lots of ways to get to where you need to be. Your time is valuable and you really want to do what interests you. So don't think you have to follow a trend because everyone else is following the trend. So on to making sure that you're operationally sound. How do you manage cash flow to minimize burnout? So it's important to note, I'm not an accountant, but I do want to help you interpret financial concepts so that you can have better conversations with one. You want to know the difference between profit and cash flow. You want to forecast your cash flow to give yourself options. And then we'll talk about 3 ways to create positive cash flow in your business. So knowing the difference between profit and cash flow. I think everyone kind of has an understanding of profit, but profit is really just an estimate. Technically, profit isn't real until you're able to capture that as cash. So your profit is your revenue minus your variable cost minus your fixed cost. Pretty straightforward. But cash flow is really the cash that comes in and out over time. So your cash in minus your cash out. So you'll need to keep track of both for sustainable business growth. Profit for the long term. So that's really how you're making sure that for the long term, your business will be successful. So if you ever heard someone talking about, making sure that, your profit margins are higher than your expenses, making sure that you're able to cover your next month based on your profit. That really is just a projection of how you're doing long term. Cash is king. It's cash right now. It's how much money could you pull out your business right now? And I think that's really important when we talk about paying ourselves. So hopefully everyone pays themselves. Let me get a yes in the chat if you're paying yourself. So your profit is really your estimated pay. It's how much you could potentially pay yourself if you had to. But when you look at cash flow, it's really how much money if you needed to take out right now to cover groceries, to take yourself on a vacation. You want to make sure that you're looking at your cash so you can actually pay yourself, not just in theory, that you can actually take money out of your business account to give yourself, if not a salary, then an owner's draw. I see you, Tiffany, kinda. We're going to get you there. We're going to get you there. So forecasting your cash flow gives you options. So this is a cash flow forecast statement. Positive cash flow is a resource for capacity building and growth investments. So a ton of numbers here, but we're going to talk about ways to interpret these numbers. So for instance, let's start on this January column right here. So maybe in January, your opening balance, and we're using small numbers because it might be easy to calculate right now, but I imagine that you might have a lot more money in your business account. So maybe in January, your opening balance is $10,000. And you have a retainer client, or you have, something that's pretty easy to sell that you bring in for $10,000 a month. So that's $10,000. You are spending $3,000 at the beginning of the year for your tech investments. So that's you investing in your Squarespace and your Zoom and your Calendly, all of the tech stuff that you need to buy your yearly subscription for. You're spending $1,000 on marketing, and you're paying yourself $4,000, because you should also be always paying yourself. So then the difference between your cash in your business and your cash out of your business is $2,000. So that's $2,000 that you add to your bank account. So now at the end, your closing balance in January is $2,000. But as you're looking at your operating expenses over time, you know that because you're paying a brunt of your money at the beginning of the year for all of your subscriptions and your software, that for the rest of the months, that money is you're not going to have to pay that money. For the rest of the months, that operating expense is halves. So what can you do with the potential of that money moving forward? So you might decide that instead of waiting to the end of the year when you're counting up all your dollars to determine how much profit you have or how much money you have left over, you might decide that you want to increase your marketing spend in the middle of the year, because the rest of the year is going to be a slow month, or maybe you're slowing down with the amount of clients that you have. Maybe you're seeing that you wanted to increase the amount of clients that you have, but you're running out of capacity. You can't do it on your own. So you want to increase your marketing spends. Maybe you're investing in a contractor or an agency to help you boost that marketing, to help you boost the marketing that's more on the lead gen side, to bring more people into your funnel. And that might decrease the amount of money that leaves your business, which feels a little bit scary, but based on your cash flow that you projected for the rest of the year, you can recoup that cost. So you're starting to see that when you look at cash flow, that's money over time. You're not looking at the snapshot of that one moment, which may cause you to feel pretty risk averse, because you're like, I'm losing this money over time. I'm losing this money at this very moment, but you know that you're going to recoup that over time. So because you spent the additional money on better marketing and brought more leads in, you bring more money in the next month. So April, instead of bringing $10,000 in, instead of the incremental growth, you've invested in someone to help you better your judgment on the marketing side. So you now have some kind of step change growth. So you double your revenue in April because you've invested that money. And then based on doubling your revenue, you've brought in a lot more cash flow. And that a lot more cash flow, you move from, $2,000, $3,500 in the first quarter. So now you're bringing in additional $13,000 in the next quarter. And that increases your closing balance. And because you've brought in that additional cash flow, now you can invest in hiring help. And maybe that can be full-time help, maybe that can be part-time help, or you may be able to give yourself a raise or a bonus because you want to use that for a vacation. And though it might minimize your cash flow from the month before, you see that you still are ending with $32,000 in the bank. So, and hopefully you can see this difference in your closing balance from February, where you've completely doubled the amount of money, not just that you've paid yourself, but the amount of money that you have to move through your business. So hopefully you can see cash flow gives you options. So instead of waiting to the end of the month or waiting to the end of the year to decide, do I have money to hire people to help me? Do I have money to invest in someone to take over my marketing? Do I have money to better my website? All things that I know will help me build capacity to grow my business. Using cash flow, using forecasting cash flow can help you make smarter investments ahead of time. So 3 ways to increase positive cash flow in your business. So cash flow is a system. It's not just money in or money out. You're really looking at how much sales volume do you have? What's your operating capacity? and also what your pricing and terms are. So pricing and terms are really, really important when thinking about cash flow, because one of the differences between profit being an estimate and cash flow being cash in is anyone who's worked with a large company and has run into a net 60 or sometimes a net 90 payment. So you might capture that revenue as an estimate that you're going to get, but if you don't have that money in your bank because they're waiting 90 days to pay you, you might have a cash flow issue. So you want to plan on using this cash flow system to build capacity into creating cash flow. So we just talked about bringing in more clients. So in order to bring in more clients, it isn't about you doing a ton of more work. It might be increasing your marketing so that you can increase your sales volume, or increasing your capacity through your time, team, and tech so that you can bring in more clients. But another way to do it is to simply just raise your prices. So that means you're increasing your pricing, but you're still at the same sales volume. And then in order to increase your pricing, maybe you need to sweeten the deal a bit more. Maybe you add, maybe you begin to bundle more services, or you have a dedicated account person that can work with your clients. So it makes your services look more valuable so you can increase your pricing. But also it can be collecting deposits and establishing milestones. So this is changing your pricing terms. So instead of waiting for that net 90 to get the entire amount of your revenue, maybe for new clients, you're asking for them to give a deposit. Actually, for all clients, you should be asking them to give a deposit because you're starting the work. And technically, without getting that deposit, you're doing a bit of work for free until you actually capture that cash. So maybe it's establishing, I've seen everything from a 10% to a 50% deposit that you put in your contract, that you change your pricing terms, and that's what you're gathering from your clients. Or maybe you're pricing per milestone. So you have a deposit, and then maybe after the first month you're capturing money, even if it isn't a retainer, but you're doing this over time. So maybe you're capturing revenue over time. This helps boost your cash flow for months that maybe you want to invest in more ways to grow your business, or in more ways to give yourself more time. And then you want to automate your invoices. So this might sound super easy, but often not having to chase revenue or not having to chase cash from a client can help you a lot. And then in order to automate your invoices, maybe it's you're increasing your capacity by hiring more staff to help you do it, or getting a software that can help you do automated payments over time. I believe both Calendly and Acuity does that, and also PayPal, but you're investing in things so that you don't have to chase money, so you could spend more time investing and making more money. So we did a lot. I talked through a ton, but I did want to make sure that I saved time for you to ask many questions for any of the things that we talked about. So hustling is a thing that you have to do for your business. There's a way, it's you in the startup phase figuring things out, or often if you're in a transition or a pivot phase, you're trying to figure things out. But we want to graduate from that. We don't want to get stuck there. So graduating from the hustle means trusting yourself enough to be decisive about what your business needs to reach a clear vision, iterating your marketing ecosystem based on your market, your objectives, and your capacity. Where do you need to go? Do you have the capacity to do it? What objective will it fulfill? And then focusing on positive cash flow to better your quality of your working life and also your outside life. And what that leads to growth. So resources and questions. I did promise that I was going to share some podcasts. So when we think about things that you can read and listen for incremental growth, Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs is a great book. I cannot recommend it enough. These are a woman and a dude, and they are talking about financial concepts in ways that everyone can understand. You don't need to be an accountant to understand it, but again, they're teaching you things so you can have a smart relationship and conversation with your accountant and really take charge of your business. A podcast that I love, it's called Behind the Brilliance, released on Nicole Bell. It's lots of stories of people, getting insights about how people pivoted their business or changed direction or had to shutter their business or increase their growth. Resource.co has a project scope library, template library. So these are things where you can go in and see how other people are charging for, corporate workshops, or how they're charging for social media management, or how they're charging for retainers. I think it's a really good resource to get knowledge on how other people are charging for things. And then if you're working with your North Star and trying to figure out what your metrics are, I have a free assessment that can really help you on those 3 points of like, is it bringing in more clients? Is it making sure that you have less time working? Is it going deeper with clients? And then if you want step change growth, you can always work with me. I offer marketing VIP days, which is really just an intensive where we spend 1 or 2 days building out your entire marketing and sales ecosystem, or leadership coaching where we work through your vision, your marketing, profit generation, and your operations over time. So here's my contact information. If you have a ton of questions that you want answered and you want more time, you can also grab the slides from me. So if you would love to have these slides, you can email me. I just ask that tell me a bit about how my office hours helped you, or what you wish would have been included, but please feel free to email me. And then I did see a ton of your questions beforehand. Hopefully I was able to answer some, but I do want to answer one question that I got beforehand that I think could be really helpful. And then I'll open the floor for any more questions. So what are some strategies to gain new clients and build relationships when it feels like the market is saturated and no one wants to pay? So market feels saturated, no one wants to pay. It really is considering who your market is and what value you provide. So is this a market that you want to stick with? Are you finding that you're consistently bumping up against people who think your price is too high, or people who aren't ready to buy? So consider, is this a market that you still want to be in? Or if no one wants to pay, and it really is less about the market that you're in and more about what does the market value at this very moment, how can you position your services to be more valuable to what they need at the moment? So maybe you were, positioning yourself to be more about marketing in the past. So, I will say moving forward, because of the way that people are looking at recession, they're looking at marketing differently. So maybe you don't offer brand marketing. Maybe you start to lean into acquisition marketing. Maybe you start to lean into, marketing maintenance. So looking at what they have existing and bettering that instead of creating whole new strategies. So really, when you're thinking about building relationships in places that feel saturated, it's about your positioning. Which market are you in? Does that market, researching that market and seeing, does that market really want to invest in what your services are? And then if you're feeling like no one wants to pay, can you transition your value? Can you offer something else that might be pressing at the time? I will say right now, a lot of corporate places are thinking about how to tighten their belt on marketing spend, but they're always going to have to do acquisition marketing. They're always going to have to bring people, they're always going to have to bring consumers in. So maybe you're looking at not giving them brand new systems, but bettering the systems that they already have. Or instead of offering full packages that produce things from them, maybe you are offering retainers where you're giving them a couple hours a month for consulting. Okay, so I have another question. Can you talk more about Behind the Brilliance? I used to listen to Lisa Nicole Bell, but stopped during COVID. So I think Behind the Brilliance is great for incremental growth, because it really is just people sharing the insights from their stories. So she talks to creative people who own companies, but also who are create content, who might have service businesses. It is a long form podcast, so it will take you about an hour to listen. But I think we learn a ton from hearing other people's stories. So I think it is a very valuable thing for that incremental growth, things that you can learn over time. Are there any more questions?
Yes, feel free to drop any last questions in the chat. But this was such an incredible session, Shanae. Thank you so much for hosting and sharing your expertise in such a digestible, tangible way. This was so amazing. And thank you everyone for showing up and participating and asking questions and, being open for growth and, breaking that hustle mold.